And welcome. Thank you for joining us at our third webinar in the IELTS from Start to Finish series. Today we're back with Teena, an expert from Melbourne, Australia, who has 18 years of experience with IELTS. Today we're going to take you through IELTS speaking and how it is marked according to the assessment criteria. Once that finishes up, Teena will be answering questions from the Zoom chat and Facebook comments for about 15 minutes. We hope you learn a lot today, and without further ado, let's kick over to you for the masterclass. Teena, hello.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'd just like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon. We're going to be looking at the speaking test and how it's marked. So welcome to wherever you are. I'm going to talk to you today about some practical speaking test tips. We'll look at the format of the test. I'll also show you 3 examples of speaking tests ranging from band 6 to band 8. I'll also talk to you about how you'll be scored and some costly mistakes that you can avoid making. Now, in your preparation for the IELTS test, it's best if you decide which module is best suited to you, whether it's the academic module or the general training module. Now, the speaking test is the same for both modules. In fact, the only difference between the academic and the general training lies in the reading and the writing. So the listening and the speaking modules are both exactly the same. So if you find that your English language skills are better suited to numbers, for example, and you're here to look for a job, you might find that the general training version is a better option for you. But if you're here for university entry, then you'll need to take the academic module. The fact that we offer 2 different modules is unique to the IELTS test. So let's get started, because time goes very quickly. And as Sam said, I'll be answering your questions in the last 15 minutes, but let's have a look at the speaking module. And I'd like you just to take a moment to consider, I'm not sure if you can participate in live polling from wherever you are, but just have a think about how often you use English at home when you're chatting about everyday topics such as food and hobbies and sport. Is it every day? Is it 2 or 3 times a week, once a week, or rarely? Now let's look at the format of the speaking test. Your test will, sorry, my page is just taking a moment to load. The test will run between 11 to 14 minutes. And the beauty of doing an IELTS speaking test is that you're face to face with a real live human being. You don't have to speak into a computer or anything like that. And there are 3 parts to the test, and the examiner will expertly guide you through those 3 parts. Part 1 is just designed to relax you. It will run for between 4 and 5 minutes. And it's just questions about where you work, if you work or if you're a student, or they might ask you about where you live. And then there'll just be some general follow-on topics, like I said, just designed to relax you and ease you into the test. Part 2, this is the tricky part for a lot of candidates, because this is where you'll have to speak for 2 minutes. Please don't think that you only have to talk for 1 minute. The examiner will push you to get 2 minutes of speaking out of you, and you'll be given a topic. Now, before you're asked to speak for the 2 minutes, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you'll be allowed to make some notes, and the examiner will have note paper and a pencil there for you. So make sure you use that 1 minute of thinking time to just jot down some words and things that will help you, and have a look at those bullet points on the card, on the topic card that's given to you. Now, you don't have to cover all of the bullet points that are on the card. They are just there to help you. So please don't worry if you don't cover everything on the card. It's just there to guide you. You're not being assessed if you talk about everything that's on the card or not. But make sure you pay attention to that 4th bullet point, because that often gives you the most to talk about. It'll ask you to explain more on the topic. Now, part 3, that will run for between 4 to 5 minutes, and that is just a follow on from what you've talked about in part 2. So again, the examiner, you don't have to worry about when part 1 is finishing or when part 2 is starting. You don't have to worry about the timing at all. The examiner will take you through that. So I hope that you had a chance to think about how often you use English, and in the lead up to the test, it's really, really important that you be using English every day and be speaking it as much as you can. You've got to make the most of the time that you're in an English speaking country. Now, if any of you have had time to access the IELTSessentials.com website, you'll find there a public version of the band descriptors. And these band descriptors are very similar to what the examiner uses when they are assessing your speaking. You'll see there are 4 columns and 9 rows. And this is what you're assessed on: your fluency and your coherence, your vocabulary, your grammatical range and accuracy, and your pronunciation. So I invite you to check out the public version of the band descriptors so you can get more of an idea of how you're being assessed. Now, all of that criteria that I just mentioned is worth 25%. So fluency and coherence is how well you can speak on a particular topic for a certain amount of time. Do you use linking words to join your ideas together? Are you able to speak fluently without too many hesitations or pauses? And are you able to use a wide range of connecting words rather than using like all the time, or and because? A lot of candidates use like a lot, and that often prohibits them from moving from a band 6 to a band 7 range. Lexical resource is the range of vocabulary that you use. Are you able to use a wide range of words to express yourself precisely, or do you use simple words repetitively? And these are things that the examiner is listening for. Your grammatical range and accuracy, again, are the examiner's listening for the range of grammar structures that you use, how accurately you use them. You're still allowed to make some mistakes and still get a band 7, as you'll listen in the upcoming speaking tests that I'll show you. But again, it's the complexity. Do you use complex sentences or do you use a lot of simple sentences? And your pronunciation. Now, this is where the examiner will be listening to see how much your first language interferes with your English, and how well do you use intonation to express yourself. So each of those are equally worth 25%. Now, in the next section of this presentation, I'm going to show you 3 speaking tests. And we're going to look at a band 6 to start off with. Then we'll look at a band 7, and then we'll look at a band 8. And in each of these interviews, you'll be listening to part 3 of the speaking test. So that means that they've completed part 2 and they're lengthening the discussion of the topic that was in part 2. So let's have a look at Brian, who's from China, and he came out with a band 6. And we'll have a look and a listen to him, and then I'll talk you through the examiner comments.
Now, we've been talking about a well-known person you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, famous people in your country. So in China, what kind of people become famous?
Politicians, the pop stars, and, sports stars. It's similar with the other countries, I think.
Is one of those groups more popular than others?
It depends, because for politicians, you have to know them because they appeared all the time on the televisions, on newspapers. But for some pop stars, because it's especially famous for the young people, because the young people to follow the stars and the new trends. But for sports stars, they mainly become famous during some Olympic games or some competitions. So it really depends.
What about in the past? Were those same people famous in the past? Politicians, sports stars, and pop stars?
I think so, because even I have talked with my parents at their age, and when they was young, they also follow some pop stars and the sports stars, and for the politicians, they change quite often. So yeah, they're also famous. Yeah.
And how about the future? Where do you think it's going to go?
I think this kind of people will remain famous in the future. This type of people, because we still have lots of new pop stars, sports stars, and some new politicians. But I think some other people will join them as well. For example, nowadays some like entrepreneurs. For example, the founder of the Facebook, he's famous for everyone. Even some not weird but strange people like the founder of the WikiLeaks. He's also popular because the things has done. So I think this kind of new raising group people will join the famous people in the future.
And do you think technology is going to be the place where many of our famous people come from in the future?
Definitely, because I think nowadays most of people use the Facebooks, the Twitters, so definitely this kind of website or the new technology will help to make people famous. And I think many people are working on it because there are special companies to make these people famous through the internet, the advertisement or the promotion. Yeah.
Now let's talk about celebrity culture. Often famous people are used in advertising.
Yep.
Can you give me some examples of that?
Well, it's quite often, we can see lots of famous people on the television. For example, like one typical example is the Michael Jordan, because he is actually, when the first time the Nike become very famous, it's because Michael Jordan, because he is the first, he's the first NBA stars, to sign a company to have the, serious commercials for specific companies. And I think that's a typical example, how the famous people to help the company successful, and also the company use his money to make the stars become more famous. So I think it's, yeah.
And that example you're talking about with Michael Jordan, he's a basketball player who is promoting a product that he was personally involved in producing. What about celebrities who endorse products for which they have no personal connection?
Yeah, it's quite often because people are profit oriented. Because we can see lots. I think for some like makeup production, we can see lots of famous female stars. They just say, okay, this one's so good, it's fantastic. Nobody know whether she has used it or not. Yeah, I think sometimes it depends on this is ethnic choice. Someone they really try it and use it and then say, okay, this one's fine, it's good. So we can rely on it, but some of them just want to get the money. So it's just do the promotion stuff without really using it or testing it.
Now, how about our young people? How might famous people or celebrities have a negative impact on our young people?
Well, as we know, some famous people is not that good. I have to say, I cannot say they're immoral, but the actions they have done is really bad. The example for the young kids or the young generation, because some of them once they become the famous, they just try to drugs, stay in the clubs, all day, not all day, but all the night, and definitely, young people sometimes cannot distinguish good things or the bad things. Sometimes they just follow the star's actions. So it makes, some of them just, say, it's pretty cool thing, to try some drug because that star is trying it, or many stars are trying it. Or it's pretty cool, to stay with girls all the time, different girls all the time, some my, idol, he's doing the same thing. So I think it's pretty bad negative effects on the young people.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the end of the speaking test.
Thanks.
Okay. So let's have a look at what the examiner had to say about Brian's performance. Now, he was really, really good at giving extended responses, and he was able to use a good range of linking words. We heard, for example, actually, as a result, he used words like mainly. And he used grammatical structures well to introduce ideas, by having a hobby, by doing sports, by using and tasting. But a lot of times there was some repetition, and that resulted in a lack of coherence, and he overused words such as well, like, cause, and yeah. Now, I actually thought his lexical resource was one of his strongest points because his range was certainly wide enough for him to discuss different topics, and he used some less common expressions and collocation, such as get on very well with each other, increase money for the charity, good for the community, developed country. He used words such as physiologically and physically, but sometimes he was unaware of his register or style, and he used quite a lot of informal English like gonna and wanna rather than going to and want to. So just be mindful of that when you're doing the speaking test. He did use a range of grammatical structures. He used really quite well both simple and complex sentences, but what prevented him from getting a 7 were the mistakes in the complex sentences. So they just want to get big car, big house, and that's the reason that forces them to work very hard than before. Whereas the correct way to say that was, they just want to get a big car and a big house, and that's the reason that forces them to work very hard or to work harder than before. But his meaning is clear. So despite those grammatical mistakes, we really still could understand what Brian was saying. Now, in regards to his pronunciation, there was a slight strain in listening to him. He was generally clear. He used some stress and intonation, but quite typical of a lot of Chinese speakers of English, his intonation was generally flat, and his rhythm was also quite mechanical. He mispronounced a lot of words. So we heard whale for while, and we heard lera instead of leisure, louts for lots, and he also mispronounced entrepreneur as well. So it'll be those types of things that the examiners are listening for, and these can be the differences between a band 6 and a band 7. Keep in mind that in these 4 areas of the fluency and coherence, the lexical resource, the grammatical range and accuracy, as well as the pronunciation, if you get, say, a 7 for fluency and coherence, a 6 for lexical resource, and a 7 for grammatical range and accuracy, and a 7 for pronunciation, you'll still come out at a 6.5 because you got that 6 in lexical resource. So that's how the test is scored. So let's have a look now at Alexandra. She's from Colombia, and she is an excellent example of a band 7. So again, we'll have a look and a listen to this, and then I'll come back with you and we'll go through the examiner comments.
So we've been talking about a well-known person that you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you 1 or 2 more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, being in the public eye. Yeah. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being famous?
The advantages are that first, that you will get really rich, and the fame actually helps you because you don't have to pay for a lot of stuff. They will give you free dresses and free stays in the hotels, free meals, free everything. So actually you're saving money plus the money that you're earning. And the disadvantages are that being a public eye, you lose your privacy. You will always be in the eye of the paparazzi and the people, and if someone recognizes you, they will take a picture of you, and that's the end of the relaxed evening. So I think that it will be a really big disadvantage.
Do you think if a celebrity accepts those endorsements, do you think they lose their honesty?
I don't think that they will lose their honesty, but maybe it will change them. They will have to accept the environment that they are living into right now. So if they get famous and they are not selling their soul to the devil, I don't think that they are that bad. I think that it's just human, and if they like it, well, better for them.
Can you talk about how the media reports on famous people in your country?
the reports of the media in my country, they are like having half serious news and half entertainment. So the reports are often, but not that often. They don't have like big news if Shakira gets married or not. It's like a small news, but it gets bigger with the people, not with the media, because people start to talking about the news, not the media makes it big.
Do you think more time should be spent on current events and political news?
I think so, but I think that we also need a rest from the serious stuff and we also need entertainment. So it will be a balance because only bad news is not good for anybody. So I think that half and half it will be better.
Why do ordinary people find the lives of celebrities so interesting?
I think because if they see somebody that successful and rich failed or getting dumped or in jail, I think that we feel better about ourselves because we think, okay, we might not be rich, but we are better than them. So I think that's why we like it so much to see that kind of news.
So you think most people want to see that celebrity fail?
Maybe, or maybe depends. If you don't like anybody, you will like them fail. But if you really support one person, you will like them to be like really successful.
Let's talk about celebrity culture. How does the media use famous people in advertising?
In a lot of ways, because if people follows one person, for example, Justin Bieber right now in the Super Bowl, the media will use it and publicists will use him as long as it takes because if he's famous, the money return will be really high.
Do you think people want to buy a product because the celebrity endorses that?
It depends of the target, but if it's a smart target, it won't be happen like this. But if it's like a child or teenagers, they will follow anything if their leaders does it.
You mentioned Justin Bieber. Are there any negative effects of young people becoming famous?
Maybe not for the people that follows the famous people, but I think that it will be really bad for that poor guy. It's being famous at that young age, you don't know what is good and what is bad, and they will always turn bad.
Thank you very much. This is the end of the speaking test.
Okay, so let's have a look at the examiner comments about Alexandra. Now, one thing I must point out is that you might notice that Alexandra is wearing a watch. And this was a speaking test that was filmed for our to be used in our webinar series. In the actual real life speaking test, you're not allowed to wear a watch and you're not allowed to take your phone or anything with you into the interview room. I think you're allowed to take a drink, like a water bottle or something like that with you, but you're certainly not allowed to wear a watch. And that sometimes comes up in the questions. Why was Alexandra wearing a watch? But technically you're not allowed to wear one. So let's have a look at what the examiner said about the fluency and coherence. She's very fluent. She gave extended and appropriate answers, and we heard her use a good range of markers and linking words. So first, actually, I think so, for example, in a lot of ways. She did have some hesitation, but that wasn't because she was searching for language. She really only hesitated when she was trying to make her ideas clearer. Her lexical resource, again, like Brian, I thought this was her main strength. She used a wide range of vocabulary and also some less common idiomatic and colloquial language like lose your privacy, selling your soul to the devil, getting dumped. She really had some beautiful, beautiful phrases in there. Now, in regards to her grammatical range and accuracy, you probably heard her make quite a few errors with some prepositions and with her subject-verb agreement, as well as with tenses. But to counteract that, she did use a range of simple and complex sentences, and she used them quite flexibly. And the difference between a 6 and a 7 is that there are a lot of error-free sentences, and many of her sentences were. So we heard her say, if someone recognize you, instead of if someone recognizes you. If people follows instead of if people follow. You will like them fail. You would like them to fail. And it won't be happen like this instead of it won't happen like this. So those were some of the differences that prevented her from getting an 8, but certainly she wasn't low enough for a 6. Now, speaking of band 8, let's have a listen to Kush, who's from India, and she is a band 8. So see if you can pay attention to the differences between a band 7 and a band 8, and particularly listen to the vocabulary and the pronunciation.
Now, we've been talking about a well-known person who you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, being in the public eye. Famous people are watched by everybody. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that?
Okay, the advantages is that a lot of people watching you, so you become famous, and there are a lot of things which you can do correctly and politically right, because there is media watching you, and you can go ahead and pass the message to the media in a right way. The disadvantage is that you have to be diplomatically correct. At times, if there are certain things which are incorrect, still you have to go ahead and do that, which doesn't make sense, because there are a lot of political leaders, they are into corruption back in India, and at times, there are some things which are wrong, but they have to do it.
Why do they have to do it?
Because there's a lot of political pressure, and if they don't do it, the political party would not support them, and in the end, they have to resign.
Do you think the media plays a role in that? What is the media's approach to reporting what famous people do?
Well, media plays an important role. At times, media will actually show things which are not correct, or if you see it, it looks like, he's wrong, but that's not the case. So media plays a very important role. They portray in a wrong manner at times, and sometimes they do portray in a right manner.
Can anything be done about that, do you think?
Not really, because in today's world, what has happened is everything is communicated by media, television, news, internet. So you just have to go ahead and probably call the media and do a meeting and answer questions to the public and give justification and reasons.
Very often the media reports on the most trivial things in important issues, but people are fascinated by those things. Why are people fascinated by it?
Because these days people like to listen to gossip and trivial things. They're not interested in the bigger part, what's happening. They have a simple life. They would like to live it their way. They are not bothered what is happening within the country. There are only few people you see are really interested in knowing about the country and getting all the information and reacting.
Let's go on and talk about this celebrity culture. How are famous people used by advertisers nowadays?
Famous people are really used for advertising because, one, they can promote the product, and two, there are a lot of fans. They're fans. So obviously, if they are using that product, what will happen is those fans will actually use that product, and of course it's a money-making business. I mean, if Mahatma Gandhi wore a watch of Swatch, I would wear it. Yeah, I would wear it. I was like, oh, he wore it, I'll wear it.
The use of famous people in advertising and other things, do you think that has a negative effect, especially on young people?
At times, yes. There are some of the advertisements which are not meant or not, they are offensive to younger generations. So at times, yes.
Do you think that famous people can influence public opinion beyond just selling things? They can make people vote differently or believe?
Yes, they can. They influence a lot of people today. Even cricketers or any kind of famous personality, they influence the public, to do things.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm fine with that as long as, at times I do like, but then at times I don't like, so I don't bother much.
All right. Well, thanks, Kush. That's the end of the speaking test.
Thank you.
Oh, Kush makes me laugh in that speaking test when I think about Gandhi wearing a Swatch watch. So I've got to have a chuckle about that. But let's have a look at what the examiner said about Kush's performance. She was really fluent and she gave long, detailed responses. When she did hesitate, it was usually content related. So that means when the examiners say that, that means that she was only hesitating slightly to decide how to make her ideas clearer. She wasn't hesitating because she was searching for language. And she used fillers such as you know and I mean, which are very common of native speaker language. She used natural linking words and markers such as that's not the case, I'm fine with that. So that's why she scored an 8 for her fluency and coherence. With her lexical resource, she used a wide range of vocab that was used flexibly and precisely. She gave some good examples of collocations such as political pressure, into corruption, today's world, promote the product, a money-making business. There were some errors in her word choice, like do a meeting rather than saying have a meeting. If we move on to her grammatical range and accuracy, she used a wide range of structures accurately, and a lot of her sentences were error-free. And a good example of a complex sentence used accurately is what will happen is those fans will actually use that product. So again, a complex sentence used very flexibly. There were some rare errors. We heard, as soon as she spoke, she used, we heard the error of the advantages is rather than the advantages are. But again, they're errors that are quite common of native speaker speech. So we could excuse her for that. Interested in the bigger part, what's happening, rather than interested in the bigger part of what's happening. Now, in regards to her pronunciation, she was very easy to understand. We didn't have to strain at all to hear her. She used rhythm and stress as well as intonation to reinforce her meaning. So at times I do like, so she put the stress on the word do. And there were only minor problems with word stress. And according to the examiner, she had some problems with the TH sound, but I didn't particularly tune into that. So I didn't notice that so much. I thought she was very, very good. So hopefully now that you've heard those 3 examples, you can get an idea of what differentiates a band 6 to a band 7 to a band 8. Okay, from this masterclass is to do as much as you can in English before the test. Please don't book your test for next week and then think, oh my gosh, I've got to start practicing now. Give yourself plenty of time to prepare. So if you book your test for a month in advance, then start your preparation right now. Hopefully, as you're already living in an English-speaking country, you're doing as much speaking in English as possible. But I know there's always that temptation to go back to using our first language. So please, I invite you to do as much as you can before the test. Now, when you're in the speaking test, you'll be nervous, and that's quite normal. And the examiner does not want to see you fail. So the examiner hopefully will smile at you, do their best to make you feel relaxed. So make sure you talk at a steady rate, not too fast, and again, not too slow. For some people who do speak English slow, that can drop you down to a band 5. Remember what I said for part 2, you're given 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you can make some notes if you wish. So please use that 1 minute of thinking time and just jot down words that will help jog your memory about what to say, and practice prior to the test. Practice talking about things for 2 minutes. Give yourself a topic, for example, your favorite holiday or the last meal that you cooked. Give yourself topics like that and practice talking about them, and time yourself for 2 minutes. It's actually quite a long time. And like I said, if you stop speaking after a minute, the examiner will try to encourage you to get you to speak for the full 2 minutes. Now, if you do need some time to think about what you're going to say, try and use some natural fillers. So if the examiner asks you a question and you're not sure how to respond, don't panic and don't stutter by going, just be calm and say, oh, gee, that's a good question. I've never thought about that before. Or now let me think about that for a second. And please try and avoid phrases such as how to say in English. That's not even grammatically correct. It's supposed to be how do you say, but try to avoid saying that as well. If you can't find the word in English, then describe what it means to the examiner. Now, as you've been listening to me speak throughout this presentation, you've heard my voice go up and down at certain times. I stress certain words to emphasize my meaning, and that's what we call stress and intonation. So hopefully during your speaking test, you'll be able to use stress and intonation well and not sound flat. Think back to the speaking test we listened to with Brian and how flat he sounded. So you've got to try and get more intonation into your voice. Now, if you make a grammar mistake and you recognize that you've made the mistake immediately and you can correct yourself, please do so. That shows the examiner that you know the right answer. But if you make a mistake and you don't pick up on it, don't worry about it. Just move on. Just keep talking. Be prepared to give more details about each of the points you make. The examiner will ask you why a lot. Okay, so again, try to give short answers to the questions. Don't think you have to speak for 2 minutes about every question. No, think about how people naturally converse in English. So if someone asks you, do you work or are you a student? You might say, oh yeah, I work. I'm a social worker. Again, just a short answer, okay? And like I said, just be prepared to explain your answers, okay? Because the examiner will ask you why a lot. Now, part 3, there'll be an opportunity to weigh up both sides of the questions. So try to do that and give examples to support them. Now, as I mentioned to you before, you'll be asked about, do you work or are you a student? Or you'll be asked about where you live. Now, it's good to rehearse what you're going to say, but don't memorize any answers because you won't sound natural. Okay, so have, rehearse what you're going to say, but don't try and memorize any language because it just doesn't come out naturally on the day. And when you're giving your opinion, try and use phrases such as in my view, as far as I'm concerned, generally speaking, I'd say. So familiarize yourself with the phrases that English language speakers use when they're giving their opinion. Hopefully you can listen to the radio and watch a lot of sort of listen to talkback radio and watch a lot of interviews on television that give you an idea of how people naturally respond to answering questions. And don't be intimidated by the topic that you'll get. There's a wide range of topics that have been tested very, very extensively on people before the questions go live in tests. So it's not as though you'll get a topic you won't be able to talk about. I've never seen that happen in 18 years of working with the IELTS test. So the topics are about things such as education, health and fitness, travel and leisure, transport, communication, could be about family, friends, a whole range. So just to summarize, we're coming up to our question time very shortly, but as I've said before, I can't stress enough the opportunities that you need to take advantage of and use English as much as you can, and set targets for your preparation. Okay, be really meticulous in your planning and think about, okay, I've booked my test for next month, so I'm going to have a week focusing on speaking, a week focusing on listening, a week on reading, a week on writing. Or you might want to mix it up to suit you, whatever you decide. As I spoke to you about at the beginning of the webinar, decide which module is suited to you. Is it academic or the general training module? This is unique to the IELTS test. So if you're here to work in a field such as IT or engineering and you use numbers more in your work than words, then the general training module might be a better way for you to showcase your English language skills. I've talked to you about how you'll be scored, and again, I invite you to go to the IELTSessentials.com website to check out the public version of those band descriptors. And for those of you who have done an IELTS preparation course, well done, because that does help you prepare for what to expect in the test. But if you've already done a preparation course and taken the test and haven't got the score you need, please don't go back and do another preparation course, because it's not going to help you improve your English. If you didn't get the score you needed on the IELTS test, then chances are you need to do some general English training or academic English training to improve those skills. IELTS preparation courses only maximize the English skills that you already have. Now, to achieve a band 7, that actually represents thousands of hours of learning English. And research shows that it takes 3 months of intensive full-time study to be able to move from one band to another. And that's a long time if you think about 3 months of studying English full-time. So take a long-term approach to your English language learning, and anything that you do in English is going to help you improve those skills. So push yourself as much as you can every day. Now, this is a good screen to take a snapshot of. It's got a wealth of resources and ways of you to join the IELTS global community. There's a Facebook page which is very interactive. You can have questions answered, and a lot of preparation resources available at IELTSIDP.com. And there's another IELTS talk. It's called Meet the Teacher, which is on the 6th of May, and that'll be at 5 p.m. So again, it's giving you the link there as to where you can sign up for that. So I hope you found what I've spoken to you about useful, and I think we're pretty well timed to go to questions now, if that's all right. Sam, if we've got some questions available.
Yeah, I think you ran that perfectly to time, Teena. That was exactly 40. I think it just ticked over to 45 minutes as you finished that. Thank you for that amazing explainer on IELTS speaking. I think the advice you gave towards the end was especially thorough. I think that was probably really handy to a lot of people. We've had a lot of questions come in, so if you're good to go, I think we can, kick off with questions from the audience. Do you mind unsharing your screen so we can get our faces all up?
Sure.
Excellent. Okay, question 1. Let me just get to it. How can we best improve our fluency in speaking?
Well, again, I think it's the practicing as much as you can, and try and practice your English with native speakers of English. So then you can listen to how native speakers connect their language together. And I think it's really important. Sorry, I'm just giving myself some more light there. I think it's really important to just practice as much as you can. Please don't underestimate how important it is to physically do the practice. It's okay to sit at home reading and learning new vocabulary, but it's only the practice that's going to help you improve. And there's really no other way around it. There's certainly no quick ways of improving. It's really just that hard work of practicing.
I think that's really good advice. Thank you. Question 2, how important is having an accent during speaking, and are we assessed on our accent in any way?
Look, the examiner's not assessing you on your accent. The examiner is listening for how much does your accent interfere with your English. So if we think back to those speaking tests that we listened to, Brian, we had to strain a little bit to understand Brian, but both Alexandra and Kush were quite easy to understand. So you're not being penalized for having an accent. Excuse me. It's just that how much does that accent interfere with your English? Because everybody's got an accent. Even native English language speakers have accents. So you're certainly not penalized for having an accent at all.
Excellent answer. Thank you. I think that was amazing. Question 3, what happens if we exceed the time limit in speaking part 2?
If you do exceed the 2-minute speaking time, that's great, because obviously you've had plenty to say. So well done. But the examiner will interrupt you by just saying thank you. And that's the polite way of the examiner asking you to stop. Or they might put their hand up and going, thank you, thank you. But that's how they'll stop you. And they keep track of the time, so you don't have to worry about that. And well done if you can speak for the full 2 minutes. That's an amazing achievement.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they hit the full 2 minutes, that's spectacular.
Yeah.
Question 4, will we be marked for our grammar as we use it while speaking?
Yes, you will be. The examiner's listening for everything all at once. Those 4 criteria that we talked about: your fluency and coherence, your lexical resource, your vocabulary range and accuracy, as well as the pronunciation. So the examiner, is really, really busy during the test, listening to all of those 4 things. So yes, grammar is certainly something that they're listening for.
Excellent. One of the 4 assessment criteria is grammatical range and accuracy. Yeah. Yep. Question 5, you said part 1 was a way to relax the person sitting the test. Does that mean part 1 is not being tested?
No, you're being tested throughout the whole test. But, in part 1, the questions are very general and very relatable. So that's why I say it's just a way to not ease you into the test, but it is just designed to, I think that's the way that the test runs, that it is just to help you settle in and relax, because you certainly are being assessed in part 1, but it's not too challenging. What the topics that you're being asked on are very familiar topics and very easy to talk about.
Great answer. Thank you. Question 6, what criteria does a test taker need to meet to score a speaking band 8 or above?
Well, if you have a look at Kush, and think back to when we looked at Kush having those skills that she had. So using very complex sentences accurately, only making a few errors, having a good range of vocabulary, and being very, very fluent. So if you think back to when we listened to Kush, and as I said, when she hesitated, it was only to make her ideas clearer. She didn't hesitate for very long at all. And she had a good range of vocabulary as well. So again, just check out those resources that we put up on the slide before, because there'll be other examples of Band 8s out there that you can have a look at and get more of an idea about. And check out those public versions of the band descriptors as well, because that will again give you more of an idea of what the examiners are looking for.
Great answer. Yeah, I think there's nothing more helpful than checking out the public band descriptors and the assessment criteria. Yeah, great answer. Question 7. If we make a grammatical error while speaking and immediately notice it, should we correct ourselves? And if so, what is the best way to do so?
Look, just, I mean, correct yourself. So, for example, if I was to say to you, oh, the advantages is, I mean, the advantages are, that's a way of correcting yourself immediately. So if you do notice yourself make a mistake, and can correct it, then please do so, because that shows the examiner you know the right thing to say.
Completely agree. I've had to correct myself a few times in these
Yes.
webinars, I think.
Yeah.
Question 8. I'm stuck around a band 5.5/6, but I want to score 7.5 to 8. What do you think can help me?
A lot of practice. A lot of practice. Remember what I said before, how it takes roundabout, you know, our research has shown that it takes 3 months of intensive full-time English language training to move from one band to another. And if you're not studying as intensively as that, it can take much longer. So just take a long-term approach to your study, and don't waste your money on keep taking the test, thinking that you're going to get lucky, because the IELTS test is not designed for luck. It's designed, it's testing you on your skills. So maybe go away and spend 3 months doing some English language training and see how you go with that.
Excellent answer. Practice, I think, makes perfect, as they always say.
Yes. Or practice makes progress, Sam. No one's perfect.
True, I like that more.
Yes, I like that more too. Practice makes progress.
I'll remember that. Question 9. Will there be current world situation topics, I assume related to COVID-19, during the speaking test?
No, the topics aren't so much sort of current affairs or news based. So no. But of course, most candidates, you know, in the last few months have been talking about COVID a lot, and that's fine. So it's up to you. If you want to bring in some current affairs or talk about some current news, that's fine. But you're not being tested on your knowledge of current affairs. The topics are very general.
Excellent. Great answer. Question 10. Is hand movements or hand gestures acceptable during the speaking test if I'm trying to express an idea?
Of course they are. And if that's the way you naturally, I mean, you can't see my hands at the moment, but they're all over the place. I talk with my hands a lot. So if that's how you naturally speak, then sure, by all means, use your hands.
I do the same
Yeah.
thing, so I definitely understand. Question 11, could you please help us understand how we can practice for pronunciation and lexical resource?
Oh, well, I think reading a lot helps with your vocabulary, because again, when you're reading, you come across words that you don't know, and in your preparation, it's good to be trying to learn, you know, new words and introduce new words into your vocabulary every day. So I think reading definitely helps with your lexical resource, or the same as if you're watching TV or listening to the radio and you hear a word that you don't understand, you know, you write it down, you look it up, and you become familiar with it. And again, with your pronunciation, it's just listening to native speakers and emulating them. So in essence, copying them. how they're pronouncing words, and how they're saying it. That's what will help. And again, getting back to that practice.
Great answer. Thank you.
Mm.
This will be our last question for the night. Is it better to speak in an informal way with my examiner or in a formal way?
Well, again, think back to when we watched Brian and the examiner sort of penalised him a little bit for saying things like wanna instead of want to and gonna instead of going to. So be mindful that it's a test environment. You don't have to be super formal and super polite. Just be yourself, but don't go overboard on the slang words or the informal English. Just be yourself.
I like that. It's a good advice to close on, I think. Be yourself. Thank you for that answer. Sadly, that's all the questions we have time for tonight. Remember, if your question didn't get answered, then just message it to us directly on Facebook and we'll answer it for you. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks with IELTS teacher Rochelle van der Meer hosting an IELTS Talk Meet the Teacher session, which I think should be really great. In the meantime, definitely check out the pages listed on the global community slide. I think those are great portals for all types of IELTS resources. Again, a huge thank you, Teena, for running us through that IELTS Speaking Masterclass and providing some brilliant answers to those questions. As always, you're a delight to have as a webinar host.
Thank you very much. I wish everybody well in their preparation.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, all the best, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.